something happened behind palace walls that allegedly changed everything in a matter of moments. A last-minute proposal arrived. Expectations quietly rose. Some believed a door that had been closed for years was finally about to reopen. But then came a sudden reversal so dramatic that even longtime royal insiders reportedly found themselves stunned. And now, whispers of newly surfaced evidence have sparked an entirely new mystery. What did King Charles see? What changed his mind so quickly? And why are some royal watchers convinced this decision may have permanently reshaped Meghan Markle's future relationship with the monarchy? For weeks, the atmosphere around the royal family had already been unusually tense. King Charles was carrying the weight of public duties while continuing to face personal challenges that kept the world watching his every move. At moments like these, palace observers often claim important conversations happen far away from cameras, hidden behind polished doors and carefully guarded schedules. And according to growing speculation, this was exactly the environment in which a controversial proposal allegedly emerged. The rumors began quietly, a whisper here, a comment there. Then suddenly, multiple royal commentators started discussing reports that Meghan had allegedly submitted what some described as a final attempt to reopen discussions that many believed had already reached a dead end. Nobody could agree on the exact details, nobody could point to a public document. Yet the story kept spreading because the timing felt impossible to ignore. The monarchy was navigating a sensitive period. Questions about the future seemed to be hanging in the air, and into that atmosphere came a proposal that reportedly carried enormous implications. At first, some insiders supposedly expected compromise. After all, royal history is filled with negotiations, quiet understandings, and carefully managed reconciliation. But then something happened that transformed the entire situation. Reports began suggesting that new information had allegedly been presented to the king before any final decision was made. And that is where the mystery deepened dramatically. What exactly was this information? Nobody seems to know for certain. Some claimed it involved past disputes that had never fully disappeared from palace memory. Others suggested it related to trust, protocol, and concerns that extended far beyond a single proposal. Whatever it was, one detail appeared again and again in various accounts. Those around the situation allegedly noticed a sharp shift in Charles's attitude after reviewing the material. The king, who was expected to weigh possibilities, suddenly appeared far less interested in compromise. The atmosphere reportedly changed almost overnight. That abrupt change triggered a storm of speculation. Why would a monarch known for caution move so decisively? Why would discussions that supposedly seemed alive suddenly lose momentum? And why did palace whispers start sounding less like negotiations and more like preparations for rejection? The deeper observers looked, the stranger the situation appeared. Because this story did not begin with a single proposal. According to reports circulating through royal circles, it may have started months earlier. Long before headlines began discussing a final request, there were already suggestions that efforts were being made behind the scenes to rebuild damaged connections. Communication channels that many believed were frozen allegedly showed signs of activity. Indirect conversations reportedly took place. Mutual contacts were said to be involved. Tiny movements occurred beneath the surface where public attention could not easily follow. Supporters viewed these alleged efforts as genuine attempts to ease tensions. They argued that no reconciliation could happen without private discussions first. But critics looked at the same events and saw something entirely different. They questioned the timing. They questioned the motives. They questioned whether larger strategic considerations might have been influencing every step. That disagreement created two competing stories. One side saw healing, the other saw calculation, and the palace reportedly found itself caught somewhere in between. As major royal events approached and conversations about the institution's future intensified, questions started multiplying. Would certain family divisions finally soften? Could old conflicts be set aside? Would there be room for a new understanding? Nobody knew, but insiders increasingly claimed that senior advisors were becoming more cautious rather than more optimistic, because the issue was no longer just about repairing relationships. It was becoming about what any new arrangement might mean for the monarchy itself. That distinction changed everything. Royal institutions operate differently from ordinary families. Every decision carries symbolism. Every gesture creates precedent. Every compromise sends a message. And according to reports, advisors allegedly began examining not just what a proposal could achieve today, but what it could mean years from now. Suddenly, discussions that looked simple became incredibly complicated. Questions emerged about trust. Questions emerged about expectations. Questions emerged about whether certain lines, once crossed, could ever truly be redrawn. The deeper palace figures reportedly looked into the situation, the more layers they discovered. Old events were allegedly revisited. Past decisions were reviewed through a fresh lens. Details that once seemed minor started attracting renewed attention. Conversations that appeared unrelated suddenly became pieces of a much larger puzzle. And that is when the atmosphere reportedly shifted from hopeful to suspicious. Observers began hearing whispers of internal reviews, private consultations, and increasingly frequent discussions among senior figures. Nobody publicly confirmed what was happening, but the pattern itself became impossible to ignore. Something bigger than a family disagreement appeared to be unfolding behind the scenes. For King Charles, the challenge reportedly became more difficult with every passing day. He was no longer looking at a proposal in isolation. Instead, he was allegedly weighing it against years of history, institutional responsibilities, and questions about the future direction of the monarchy. Every new piece of information seemed to add another layer of complexity. Every review appeared to raise fresh concerns rather than provide reassurance. Then came what many insiders describe as the turning point. According to multiple reports, the proposal stopped being viewed as a question of reconciliation and started being viewed as a question of protection. Protection of tradition, protection of precedent, protection of the institution itself. And once that transformation occurred, everything changed. Because when the conversation moved away from family feelings and toward the future of the crown, powerful voices inside royal circles reportedly began paying much closer attention. The proposal was no longer being measured by emotion. It was being measured by legacy. As the internal discussions reportedly intensified, the circle around King Charles allegedly became smaller, more cautious, and far more focused on one question: what happens if this proposal is accepted? Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about repairing personal relationships. According to royal commentators, it became a debate about consequences. Every possible outcome was reportedly examined. Every potential compromise was measured against the future of the monarchy itself. And as that process unfolded, influential figures inside the royal structure allegedly began weighing in with increasing urgency. Reports frequently pointed toward Prince William as a central figure in those discussions. As the future king, every major institutional decision carries significance for the reign he will eventually inherit. Observers claim that advisors were looking beyond the present moment and asking what message today's decisions might send tomorrow. Would certain concessions strengthen confidence in the crown, or would they create confusion about royal responsibilities? The questions reportedly became impossible to ignore. At the same time, Princess Anne's name repeatedly surfaced in commentary surrounding the controversy. Long regarded as one of the monarchy's most disciplined and loyal defenders, Anne was often portrayed as someone who places duty above popularity, according to various interpretations. Her perspective allegedly reinforced a principle that had guided generations of royal decision-making. What protects the institution must come before what eases temporary discomfort. That is when many royal watchers believe the atmosphere changed permanently. What began as a proposal was now being viewed through the lens of legacy. Discussions reportedly centered on public trust, continuity, accountability, and the long-term credibility of the monarchy. The more senior figures reviewed the situation, the harder it allegedly became to separate Meghan's request from the broader implications attached to it. Every review seemed to bring the same conclusion closer. Every conversation reportedly narrowed the available options. And then came the decision that sent shockwaves through royal circles. According to multiple reports, King Charles ultimately delivered a firm rejection. No revised arrangement, no dramatic compromise, no unexpected reopening of negotiations. Sources consistently describe the response as deliberate, final, and unmistakably clear. For months, speculation had revolved around possibilities, but in a single moment, those possibilities reportedly vanished. The answer was no, and suddenly the entire royal conversation changed. The reaction was immediate. Supporters of reconciliation expressed disappointment. Critics argued the outcome reflected concerns that had been building for years. Commentators rushed to explain what had happened. Some focused on the alleged evidence that reportedly altered the king's perspective. Others pointed toward questions of trust and institutional stability. Yet one thing united almost every interpretation. Few had expected such a decisive ending. The level of finality reportedly surprised even experienced royal observers. But ironically, the rejection did not end the controversy. It made it bigger. Because once the decision became known, attention shifted toward the fallout. Conversations that had once focused on whether compromise was possible suddenly turned toward what the rejection meant for the future. Could relationships recover from another setback? Would communication become even more difficult? Had the divide become too deep to bridge? Those questions began dominating royal discussions. And the more people searched for answers, the more uncertainty seemed to grow. For Meghan, according to many observers, the landscape reportedly became became far more complicated. Any path forward now appeared shadowed by the king's decision. Every future move risked being interpreted through the lens of this rejection. Meanwhile, attention increasingly shifted toward the next generation of royal leadership. Prince William's role appeared more significant than ever. Princess Anne's influence seemed stronger than ever, and King Charles found himself at the center of a decision that many believed would define an important chapter of his reign. Yet perhaps the most fascinating part of this story is that it was never truly about one proposal. Beneath the headlines, beneath the rumors, beneath the endless speculation, there was a much larger battle taking place. A battle between personal wishes and institutional duty, between reconciliation and responsibility, between family emotions and the weight of a centuries-old crown. Royal history has always been shaped by those conflicts, and according to many commentators, this episode became another powerful example of that reality. And so the mystery remains. What exactly was contained within the evidence that allegedly changed everything? How much of the reported fallout is still unfolding behind closed palace doors? And have we truly seen the final chapter of this royal drama, or merely the beginning of an even larger confrontation waiting to emerge? One thing is certain. Behind those ancient palace walls, where silence often speaks louder than public statements, the consequences of this decision may continue echoing long after today's headlines disappear. Because in the House of Windsor, controversies come and go, but questions about loyalty, trust, and the future of the crown never truly fade away.